Good morning to you and welcome to Penn Vicarage on this Monday morning. Hope you've had a lovely weekend and thank you for being with us for our Bible reflection for today. And today, friends, I'm going to read you a couple of chapters of Isaiah 23 and 24. It's quite a lot this morning. If you just bear with me, I'll read it to you first and we'll have a chat about it afterwards. So Isaiah 23 and 24. Fasten your seatbelts. Here goes. The oracle concerning Tyre. Wail, O ships of Tarshish, for your fortress is destroyed. When they came in from Cyprus, they learned of it. Be still, O inhabitants of the coast, O merchants of Sidon. Your messengers crossed over the sea and were on the mighty waters. Your revenue was the grain of Shihor, the harvest of the Nile. You were the merchant of nations. Be ashamed, O Sidon, for the sea has spoken, the fortress of the city, saying, I have neither laboured nor given birth. I have neither reared young men nor brought up young women. When the report comes to Egypt, they will be in anguish over the report about Tyre. Cross over to Tarshish, wail, O inhabitants of the coast. Is this your exultant city, whose origin is from days of old, whose feet carried her to settle from far away? Who has planned this against Tyre, the bestower of crowns, whose merchants were princes, whose traders were the honoured of the earth? The Lord of hosts has planned it, to defile the pride of all glory, to shame all the honoured of the earth. Cross over to your own land, O ships of Tarshish. This is a harbour no more. He has stretched out his hand over the sea. He has shaken the kingdoms. The Lord has given command concerning Canaan to destroy its fortresses. He said, You will exult no longer, O oppressed virgin daughter Sidon. Rise, cross over to Cyprus. Even they will have no rest. Look at the land of the Chaldeans. This is the people. It was not Assyria. They destined Tyre for wild animals. They erected their siege towers. They tore down their palaces. They made a ruin. Wail, O ships of Tarshish, for your fortress is destroyed. From that day, Tyre will be forgotten for 70 years, the lifetime of one king. At the end of 70 years, it will happen to Tyre as in the song about the prostitute. Take a heart, go about the city, you forgotten prostitute. Make sweet melodies, sing many songs, that you may be remembered. At the end of 70 years, the Lord will visit Tyre, and she will return to her trade, and will prostitute herself with all the kingdoms of the earth of the world on the face of the earth. Her merchandise and her wages will be dedicated to the Lord. Her profits will not be stored or hoarded, but her merchandise will apply abundant food and fine clothing for those who live in the presence of the Lord. Chapter 24. Now the Lord is about to lay waste to the earth and make it desolate. He will twist its surface and scatter its inhabitants. It will be as with the people, so with the priest. As with the slave, so with his master. As with the maid, so with the mistress. As with the buyer, so with the seller. As with the lender, as with the borrower. As with the creditor, so with the debtor. The earth will be utterly laid waste and utterly despoiled. For the Lord has spoken this word. The earth dries up and withers. The earth languishes and withers. The heavens languish together with the earth. The earth lies polluted under its inhabitants. They've transgressed laws, violated the statutes, broken the everlasting covenant. Therefore a curse devours the earth, and its inhabitants suffer for their guilt. Therefore the inhabitants of the earth dwindled, and few people are left. The wine dries up, the vine languishes, and all the merry-hearted sigh. The mirth of the timbrels is stilled. The noise of the jubilant has ceased. The mirth of the lyre is stilled. No longer do they drink wine with singing. Strong drink is bitter to those who drink it. The city of chaos is broken down. Every house is shut up that no one can enter. There is an outcry in the streets for lack of wine. All joy has reached its eventide. The gladness of the earth is banished. Desolation is left in the city. The gates are battered into ruins. For thus it shall be on the earth and among the nations, as with an olive grove is beaten, as at the gleaning when the grape harvest is ended. They lift up their voices, they sing for joy, they shout from the west over the majesty of the Lord. Therefore in the east give glory to the Lord. In the coastlands of the city glorify the name of the Lord, the God of Israel. From the ends of the earth we hear songs of praise, of glory to the righteous one. But I say, pine away, I pine away, woe is me. For the treacherous deal treacherously, the treacherous deal very treacherously. Terror and the pit and the snare upon you, O inhabitants of the earth. Whoever flees at the sound of the terror shall fall into the pit, and whoever climbs out of the pit shall be caught in the snare. For the windows of heaven are opened, and the foundations of the earth tremble. The earth is utterly broken, the earth is torn asunder, the earth is violently shaken. The earth staggers like a drunkard, it sways like a hut. Its transgression lies heavy upon it, and it falls and will not rise again. On that day the Lord will punish the host of heaven in heaven, and on earth the kings of the earth. They will be gathered together like prisoners in a pit. They'll be shut up in a prison, and after many days they'll be punished. Then the Lord will be abashed. Then the moon will be abashed, and the sun ashamed. For the Lord of hosts will reign on Mount Zion and in Jerusalem, and before his elders he will manifest his glory. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Okay, we've had a lot of judgment in the last few chapters, and if I'm honest with you, I was tempted this morning to duck a couple of chapters and move on. But it's dawned on me, actually, it's important that we don't do that. And I think the first thing I want to say is, I mean, we've had a lot of judgment and so on recently, and it's not been easy reading. And this morning isn't particularly easy reading either. And as I say, I was tempted just to sort of skip a couple of chapters and say, move past it. But actually, I think it's important that we don't do that. That when we read the Bible, that we read the whole thing. We don't just pick out the bits that we like, the sort of cuddly bits of the Old New Testament or something. If we're going to be honest, we have to take on the challenging bits as well as the comfortable bits, and it's important that we do that. So it's important that we read these chapters, and get what we can from them, and because God speaks through the Bible, and I think it's important that we listen to Him through it. So it's important that we do these chapters, so we will do this morning. So chapter 23 comes at the end of a whole section where God has given judgment across a whole lot of nations, and it starts with Babylon and went through various places. And chapter 23 is the last one, and it's a place called Tyre. Now Tyre, if you Google Tyre, you end up with things you put on cars. But Tyre was actually an island city just off the coast of Phoenicia, where the Syro-Phoenician woman came from, which Jesus met. And Phoenicia is largely what is nowadays known as modern Lebanon today. That's where it is. And in the days of Isaiah, it was a place of tremendous trade. It was where the ships used to leave from there. And Tarshish was a place in modern day Spain. So when Jonah was fleeing from Nineveh, instead of going to Nineveh, he was actually fleeing to Spain. Perhaps he fancied a holiday in southern Spain, I don't know. Or whatever. Anyway, so Tyre was a place of great riches, of great wealth, where lots of trade coming and throwing to and fro and so on. And again, what God's judgment here is about saying, and Isaiah is saying, is do not form alliances with other countries and so on. And your alliance has to be with God and with God alone. And I think it's interesting that he began chapter 13 with about not forming with alliance with Babylon, which was a great place of military power. And in chapter 23 that it ends here with a warning against joining up with a kind of place of riches and wealth and so on. So, and again, I think there's something here, but not be dreamt away by the carrot or by the stick, if you see what I mean. That we remain closest on God, and our alliance, our trust has to be in God, not in power and not in riches, but actually our trust has to be in God, because as it says in chapter 23, you don't do that. Your alliance has to be with God. Interesting also to say, though, that God's judgment upon the frailty, if you like, of Tyre is not in riches per se. There's nothing wrong with riches. God does not say that money is the root of all evil. It's the love of money which is the root of all evil. And it's not the riches themselves, it's the pride of Tyre. And that's a constant theme all the way through Isaiah. The importance of avoiding pride and thinking, aren't we clever, aren't we rich, aren't we clever, so on and so on and so on. Our trust, my friends, has to always be in God. So it's absolutely vital. So that's chapter 23. It comes at the end of a whole section about descriptions of not forming alliances with other countries. It starts with Babylon, which is like military power, ending with Tyre, which is all about sort of riches and so on. And again, in our capitalist world today, making sure as a church that we're not sold out to the spirit of the age, to make sure that our focus is on God and not focusing on riches and in production of wealth and so on. Our focus has to be principally on God. And then in chapter 24, we have what you call Isaiah's apocalypse, a description of judgment. Isaiah is obviously very, very aware that's around him, the people have gone astray. And it reads harshly to us, but Isaiah was struggling. And I think I was having a hard time. And I think it's similar to the apocalypse in the book of Revelation. I mean, it reads hard to us today. But Revelation was written by people who, written to a people who are being horribly persecuted by the Romans. And I think in a sense with our somewhat soft society, dare I say, that we live in now, judgment words are harsh and difficult to read. In the time of Isaiah and in the time of Revelation, when times are hard, you can kind of see how people take hope in it. And it's interesting that Isaiah reads this judgment, but in the middle of it, he can see hope. In verse 14, they lift up their voices, they sing for joy, they shout from the west of the mountains. But even with that hope going on, Isaiah can't, he almost can't cope at the moment, because he says, but how can I say? But I say, I pine away, woe is me. Because at the moment, all he can see is difficulties. He knows there's hope to come. There's all this judgment going on. He knows that God's going to win through at the end. As it says at the end, the Lord will reign supreme. God is sovereign. The Lord of hosts will reign on Mount Zion, he says in verse 23. Hope is yet to come. But Isaiah, the world Isaiah's in is tough for now. So he's saying it's really, really hard for now. There is hope to come, but at the moment, I'm still so preoccupied with the difficulties we've got. But there's hope to come. But judgment is coming because the world is in such a mess. And there's that sort of tension here between Isaiah knows that the world's a mess. And Isaiah can see that right in front of him. He knows God's going to deal with it. But at the moment, he's still preoccupied with what's going on now. But he knows that God's going to judge and God's going to sort things out. And there's going to be hope in the end. But Isaiah's kind of living that and telling people about it. Anyway, my friends, there's two interesting chapters there from Isaiah. Chapter 23 about judgment on Tyre, about the importance of, for us today, of making sure we read all the Bible, but not just the cuddly bits that we like. The importance also of not forming alliances with wealth and so on. But our trust has to be in God. Hence not forming alliances with Tyre, but it should be with God instead. And in chapter 24, all about God's judgment. But the tension that Isaiah, he sees the problems that are around him. He knows the judgment's coming. He knows that beyond that there is hope. But at the moment, he's so preoccupied with what's going on, he can't just personally cope with it himself. But anyway, great stuff. Read it again at your leisure. There's some lovely stuff in the next couple of chapters as well. Have a lovely day, my friends. Thank you for watching. Thank you for bearing with me. Have a lovely day.